address these needs, again, is a new elementary school at the Swan Pond site. And that was part of something that you, the voters, have already bought into twice. We just need to complete the pie here, the little puzzle, and that's the new elementary school. Again, the renovation of the back of the school, and in addition to it, we've been told no, and I understand what's being said out there. But again, we can only go by what information we have received, and that's through our state representatives and our state senator and our superintendent and the Department of Education and the chairman of the Department of Education, and there aren't too many other places you can go to get the information. And I understand you can get your conflicting opinions on things, but we have it in writing, and it's been presented to us, and we pretty much understand the meaning of no, I guess. You want to touch on where you're at and the information that you have in relation to reimbursements and the project, overall situation?
Steve, actually, I'd like to take the opportunity to go back and address the plan that was laid out for the school department back in 1995. And this was a plan that you referred to in terms of not only being approved by the school committee, but brought forward to this community around the reopening of the little school and then the subsequent addition to the little school, and now more recently our current work at renovating and adding to the Hood School. All of that has always been in the context of looking at the long-term elementary school needs in terms of meeting enrollments, as well as looking to the future in terms of program needs, and to make sure that in North Reading we're providing an equality of educational resources across all of our elementary facilities. And when we began our work in 1995 with the School Building Committee, we obviously followed very closely the school construction regulations. We had a very close relationship with the School Building Committee, as well as the SBAB, which is the approving authority for all school reimbursement and construction projects. So that each of the plans, the Little School Plan, the Hood School Plan, both of which are approved, as well as the proposal for a new school, has been in concert with the existing regulations for school construction. And so we've looked at things such as the recommended program needs that elementary schools should have in terms of square footage size. We've not maximized those regulations to the outer limit, but we've been conservative, and we feel, certainly at the Little School and the Hood School, that we have very, very nice facilities and have done that in a very cost-efficient way. And so too with the new school. The plan that is being presented here will not only meet the enrollment needs for 40% of our elementary population, but will address the program needs on into the future years. We're also concerned about safety. Certainly in any of our buildings, we want to address issues of air quality, heating and ventilation, handicapped accessibility, just traffic patterns of how cars and buses and students or staff are coming in and out of our buildings. So parking is certainly a major issue. The construction of schools is a very, very complex situation, and our school building committees over the years have worked very, very closely to ensure that the quality of the programs is there. It is absolutely true that the governor's proposal to change the regulations has been approved, but the actual regulations and the criteria that will support those regulations have not been approved. And in fact, they are out for public comment presently. It's not expected to be approved officially until later in November or December. And then there will be a period of time when those regulations will be disseminated and moved forward and acted on. But it is my understanding, in talking directly with the Commissioner of Education, as well as the school building and construction officials, that the overall process will remain the same. That is, that a school, that is a community that is interested in building school facilities must organize a school building committee, must have that committee duly appointed by school committees and board of selectmen. They must make their needs known to the Department of Education. They must identify the enrollment, projected enrollment, not only for a particular school district, but across the district, K to 12. They must provide inventories of existing space. They must have an approved educational plan for that school and for that level. And they need to address, bring all of this information to the school building assistance program. They will need to have a site visit, which of course we've done on a number of occasions here in North Reading. But once that's done, then the school building committee would need to go to the community and seek probably anywhere from $250,000 to $300,000 to complete what is called a schematic design. Of course, this is what we did for the little school, this is what we did for the little school, and this is what we did for the new school proposal. I believe $225,000 was the amount approved by the town to look at the schematic design. But any community going out to propose any kind of project would need to follow that phase. So a schematic design would need to be approved, and then those plans are brought back to the Department of Education. They're closely scrutinized. You need to also have those plans scrutinized by a variety of agencies, including historical interests, environmental, conservation, disability access. You need all of this to be approved. Once that's done, at that point, you are ready to step forward to the community and ask for funding. And if that funding is approved, very often the community requires a debt exclusion vote in order that the bond would be appropriated. You cannot submit an application under the current regulations or even any proposed regulations without an approved funding amount that must be certified by the town for full construction. Once you have that full construction funding, you then can complete the blueprints for the building, and you are ready to have it sent to the Department of Education for approval. One of the interesting changes that I see in the proposed regulation changes is the whole approving cycle. Right now, all projects must be submitted by June 1st in any given fiscal year. For example, our new school project, if it is approved for funding, will meet the deadline for June 1st. Under the proposed regulations, and again, I caution, they're not approved yet at this point in terms of the regulations and the criteria, but there's going to be a rolling admissions, and that there's no guarantee that there will be an immediate response to that application within that particular fiscal year. So that new projects that have not had site visits, have not had school building needs conferences, who will not be grandfathered under the current regulations, will be looking at great uncertainty. They'll be looking at uncertainty in terms of funding reimbursement. We are told that in these regulations, North Reading will qualify for just under 53%. And that number is driven by the economic factors within a community. And a quick scan of any of the base reimbursement rates shows that North Reading's economic value is high, and therefore the reimbursement rate is low. What has not been established will be these so-called incentive points. We have no information in terms of how these points will be awarded, particularly in terms of maintenance points. I do see in the proposed regulations that if a community proposes to renovate, not to renovate and add on, but to renovate a building, or to reuse a building, to capture back a space within a community and reuse it as a school, that incentive points up to 5 would be allowed. But school projects that are looking to renovate and to add on, I do not see anything in these regulations that would award incentive points for that. We will certainly learn more about that in the coming months as to whether or not there'll be some variation in those criteria. But again, the uncertainty factors here are good. We received today, and maybe Mrs. Colella, you'd like to address the recent publication that came out in terms of the numbers of building projects.
I just handed that back to you, but I'd like to comment on one thing on the percentage rate of reimbursement. Our base percentage rate under the new regulation, under the new legislation, when approved, would be 52.89%. And I was just looking through some paperwork, and I just noticed that when these regulations were first proposed, the first time we had them in our hands and looked at them, we were very uncertain as to where we were going to end up. So I asked some gentlemen in general government to do a little footwork for me as far as the percentage rates. There's a base percentage rate of 39%. And there are two additions to that 39%. One is called the community income factor, which is a percentage of the town's per capita income in relation to statewide average capital income. And the other is a community property wealth factor. North Reading equalized property valuation versus statewide average equalized property valuation. And I just noticed that when I first did this, which was close to last winter, the community income factor was based on the 1990 census. That number has remained static because we don't have the 2000 yet. But I just noticed that based on the 1998 equalized property valuations, the number that I had last year, percentage, based on 1998 property, was 58.79%. The Commonwealth has now used the 1999 numbers. I never updated this, and we're down to 52. Our percentage has dropped 5.9% in 1 year, just based on statistics held at the state level. And just commenting on your comment, we don't know where these are going to go from here, being that they are right now proposed regulations, but the additional incentive points, they don't even have definitions at this point at the state level. That's a trend that I don't like, but it just happened to pull it out.
I think it's important to point out that when these new regulations were proposed, and the rationale for proposing them, I think at the state level, was twofold. That was to redistribute the funds to those communities who are most economically in need of it, and diminish the capacity of the state to reimburse those communities who had a far better ability to pay on their own. Again, those are based on the factors that Ms. Colella just pointed out in relation to the average family income, which again, there is data for 1999 bill, but the 2000 census will be coming on those. All indications are, and I know this from the work that I do on a daily basis, are that the numbers for North Reading are going to be substantially higher than they were in 1990, and in relation to the other surrounding communities, and where we fell back in 1990, we're going to rise substantially. I think what you're going to see is we have two census tracts in the town of North Reading, one middle and one upper, and I think both of them now are going to fall into the upper income category.
And as they move up.
And as they move up, the reimbursement level goes down. So the new formula is driven by the fact that they want to redistribute the reimbursement levels and minimize the cost of the state to those areas which are most economically depressed and needed. And again, we're certainly not falling into that category. If anything, we're going in the other direction. And that's fortunate for the people that live here. In some instances, if you're looking to speculate and buy and move out, but if you're looking to stay, obviously the cost of doing business is going to be a little bit more here if you're going to be staying. And that's unfortunate, but those are the rationale for this whole new formula that's been driven up at the state level has been to, again, redistribute the reimbursement levels to those communities that are most in need are going to get a higher level of reimbursement, and those that are less in need and they're willing to pay, it's going to be